Welcome back, guys, and look at that. Look what we've managed to locate. It is the Queen of Djuma, Karula. She is slowly walking towards us. She'll eventually come past this little guarri bush that's in her way at the moment, and hopefully come right next to the vehicle here, and we'll get a really nice visual of her. It is quite a hot afternoon. It's about 95 degrees Fahrenheit or 35 in Celsius, and so what I think is happening is after a very good meal like she's probably had during the day today, she's now on a search for water. And so what I'm hoping is that she's going to come past us here, and just behind us is a small little pan that would be a perfect place for a leopard to go and quench her thirst. But look at that. Isn't that one of the most incredible sights you've ever seen? They are by far one of my most favorite animals. Absolutely beautiful. She does have 2 cubs currently at the moment, and I believe both of them were seen this morning with her. But when cats are on a carcass and they have food, then generally they will often just move towards water by themselves. They won't go all at once, and the reason why is they can then be able to protect their carcass. So if something else had to come, like vultures or hyenas, they can then look after their carcass and not lose it to those predators. And there we go, she's just coming past us now. Sure, she's on her way towards water. So Justin would like to know how much she weighs. This particular female is quite a large female. She's not incredibly large, but I would imagine that she'll probably weigh in around about 40 kilograms or 80 pounds, close to about 80 pounds, 90 pounds, somewhere around there. It will obviously be dependent on how much she's eaten, but generally that's about how much they weigh. I'm going to just quickly turn the vehicle around so that we can just get a view of her having a drink. So Jeremiah would like to know how fast a leopard can run. Well, a leopard, being an animal that is pretty reliant on its power more than anything else, is actually not the speediest of the big cats. She can probably run at about 70 kilometers an hour. That would be about the upper limit for her. She will use more camouflage than anything else when she hunts, rather than speed like or lion. And there we go. You can see now she's just come towards this little water hole, and she's now settled in the nice shady part, which is very clever from her. And she will slowly but surely lap up some water and try and just help cool down that body. Also help with all the digestion of all the meat that she's taken on during the day. You can actually see how that belly is swollen out a little bit around her front legs and back legs there. And then you'll see how when she's busy drinking there, oh, something's caught her attention. So when cats are drinking, they often do that. They'll just pop their head up a little bit just to make sure nothing catches them off guard. Ultimately, they do have to worry about things like hyenas and lions and those things. And so sometimes you'll see her just pop her head up, have a little scan around just to make sure that everything is okay. But when you see her drinking like that, you have a look at her tongue. You'll notice that she doesn't lap the water up with her tongue going up and forwards towards her nose. She actually makes like a little bucket with her tongue that curls backwards and then will bring that water up into the mouth, and she'll be able to basically use it like a little bucket on a rope and pull up little bits of water as she goes. But isn't that one of the most exquisite sights? For me, a leopard drinking is always one of those quintessential things. I always love to find them when they're like this. There's just something about it that eye stare at you, and the way that they gather the water is just incredible. Sure, thirsty girl. And eating is a lot of hard work. You can imagine consuming these big animals. There's lots of protein, which takes a lot of effort to digest. So water is very much needed. So Adaya would like to know what a leopard eats. Now, a leopard is quite an interesting animal in that it has a very varied diet. These guys are able to eat a multitude of different things, depending on the area that they're in. Obviously here they're very spoiled for choice because we have a vast array of mammal species that they're able to feed on. But generally these guys will target small to medium antelope. That's their kind of favorite prey animals. So things like impalas, duikers, steenbok. those kind of animals. But they will even eat things like termites, little insects, and go all the way up to baby elephants, baby giraffe. I've even seen one with a baby rhino once before, which is quite amazing. So they are incredibly strong cats that are able to bring down very large prey, but generally for them, they try to go after things that are slightly smaller. That just allows for them to be able to manage it effectively, and also to be able to get it up into trees and away from any other predators that could potentially steal from her. But she's a very, very thirsty girl this afternoon. She's having quite a long drink there. So Ms. Tifa would like to know, what is the difference between a leopard and a cheetah? Well, just from the beginning, and the most probably easiest way to discern the difference between the two of them is if you have a look at this cat, you will notice that she has big swollen kind of spots that look like they've exploded that form what's called rosettes, whereas a cheetah will have solid little dots that she will get all along her coat. A cheetah will also be a lot larger in terms of its longer legs, longer body. It's a lot more slender built than what a leopard is. A leopard tends to have very bulky shoulders, bulky legs, and that is because of the different ways that they survive. A cheetah relies very heavily on speed, whereas a leopard, like we've just been talking about, is a far more reliable on its power and its strength to be able to subdue larger animals, and then again to be able to take them up into trees. So cheetah slightly more slender, smaller head, and then if you have a look on the face of this leopard, you'll notice that she's got two little white lines underneath the eyes. Now a cheetah doesn't have that. They have two little black stripes that come down the length of the nose that almost looks like she's been crying with the black ink that's gone down her nose, and that's caused those markings. And that is essentially the easiest way to tell the difference between them. But I think she's absolutely loving that bit of shade with a bit of moisture as well, you know, getting nice cool sand on her belly. You can imagine that mud where it's been in the shade is moist, and so it'll be a lot cooler. So even though she's gaining quite a bit of water there, I think she's also quite enjoying the fact that it's relatively cool on her belly and on her leg areas. Those are the areas that generally get quite hot on a cat or on a furry animal. They tend to build up quite a lot of heat around their arms and their legs. All right, and so while she's still having a little drink, we're going to just link back to James, who sounds like has one of her favorite animals that she likes to hunt. So James will be having a look at that, and we'll just carry on with her and see if maybe she takes us back to the cubs, and hopefully when you join us again, they'll be back with them. So while Byron was busy messing around with stinky buffalo carcasses, we decided we would try and mess around with a little stinky impala carcass that these leopards have got. And so we came looking for Shangile and Hosanna that's maybe lying up here. And I don't know if you guys can see, but under that little bush, that bush willow, that fallen over one, is a very sleepy little Shangile. She's found herself the absolute perfect spot to have a nice afternoon nap. You can see inside there is very, very, very shady, so nice and cool inside there. There's a breeze that's now picked up that will be going through those branches there and will just be helping to cool her down nicely. It also seems that while we've been sitting here, lots and lots of little biting flies that have been irritating her, so maybe in that thicket it's slightly better than being right out in the open. But that is definitely a position for a very satisfied cat. Food, shade, a bit of a breeze now, and they will be very, very happy. But isn't it incredible, the camouflage of this animal? When you kind of looked at that first shot, it's amazing how well they blend in. It actually took us a while to find this cat. We had to do a few loops around until eventually we kind of got into an angle where we could see these spots poking out. But they are super, super camouflaged. At this stage, we still haven't seen any sign of Hosanna. He's somewhere around here. Being his normal self and being quite naughty, probably lying quite far away. But I would imagine he'll be somewhere close by, just doing much like what Shangila is doing and just finding a nice cool area just to take it easy. They know that the end of the day is going to slowly start approaching, and soon there will be a little bit of relief from the weather and they'll be able to then feed. So James, thank you very much for your kind comment. It's great to be here and great to be a part of the team. My favorite leopard in this particular area, I have two. One is Thandi, which is obviously one of the daughters of Karula, and the other one is Tiani, which is a little daughter of Salahesh, who occurs in our sort of western side of this traversing area. Both of them are beautiful little leopards, both females. And then my third favorite probably is Anderson, which is a massive male that we used to see on the western side. So I'm hoping that in time he'll slowly start to shift this way towards where Tingana is, and we maybe get a few more sightings of him. But he's an absolute beast. But I think Thandi and Tiani are, for me, my two favorites. I really enjoy both of them. Both very, very pretty leopards, and tend to be able to catch very large prey animals way out of their size category, and maybe that's why I like them. I think with Thandi, the relationship probably started when I was working at Chitwa. I once found her in my bedroom. I was actually on drive and came back for a shower after drive before hosting, and went in and had a shower, and as I came out of my bathroom, there was this little cat staring at me from inside my bedroom. Luckily, both of us got equal fright and went opposite directions instead of towards one another. And she went out the door, and I went into the bathroom screaming like a little girl. And that's where it all kind of started. From there, I used to see her regularly around my house at Chitwa. She used to spend a lot of time on my balcony, so I used to see her quite often. And so that's why I liked her. I liked to follow her around. We got lots and lots and lots and lots of sightings of her around the lodge. So I got to see her raising her first cub around there. So she was a very special leopard that I got to spend a lot of time with early on in my guiding career. And then Tiani, in the last sort of 2 years, I've been able to follow her from the time that she was about 6 weeks old, when she was born at the lodge that I was working at. And she's just grown up around that area, and so spent really a lot of time with her. And she's also quite a hooligan and a character, and tends to do all her own things. She doesn't really like to listen to mom, never really followed mom properly. She likes to kind of bounce around and do her own thing. And she's an incredible huntress already. I saw her kill a baby duiker at 4 months old, which is quite early for a leopard. And then eventually now I saw her quite recently, and she had already killed a fully grown male impala. So for a little sort of 17-month-old leopard to kill a fully grown male impala is quite special. So I like both of them for that reason. Both of them have a little bit of fight in them and a bit of kind of spunk. And so, yeah, very, very, very pretty girls as well. I actually quite like Shongile as well. I haven't spent enough time with her, to be honest, but from what I have spent with her, she seems to be quite a nice leopard. Got a nice temperament to her, is always very chilled, and has very striking eyes. I always like her eyes because they look very intense, and she always looks like she's got this very intense stare to her. So hopefully she'll become one of my favorites as well. I'd like to hear from you, James. Who is your favorite leopard? You can send us a reply and let me know. So Riva would like to know how much water a leopard would need on a day like this. It's a difficult question to answer because it depends on what's available. If you are in sort of drier conditions or in drier climates where it's still hot but not as much water around, you'd find that they probably wouldn't be able to get as much, and their daily intake would be slightly less. In this area at the moment, so much water around, I would say that they're probably requiring sort of 4 to 5 liters. And if it's very hot and they've eaten quite a bit, maybe a little bit more with all the panting. As they lose moisture from panting through their mouth, maybe it'll go up a little bit more to sort of 6 liters. But yeah, in this area I would say anywhere between sort of 4 and 5 throughout the day. So you can see Shongile's ear there is just bouncing around a little bit, and you watch her paw as well. The flies are obviously driving her crazy, landing on her mouth, lying on her ears. Thanks, James. Well, I believe you are also a huge fan of Thandi, so good on you. We have something in common. And yeah, hopefully Tiani will start spending a little bit more time this way. The last time I saw her, she was actually very, very close to coming towards Djuma. And so as a young female, she might be dispersing slightly from her mother. And who knows, maybe she becomes one of the stars of Djuma in the future. And hopefully so. She's a really pretty little leopard, and very relaxed, and hopefully she'll spend a little bit more time with us. But you can see with Shongile, much like Karula, is also breathing quite heavily, lots of panting, got her legs open to be able to cool that belly down. So Pilar would like to know how we kind of identify these leopards. So for the most part, it's spot patterns. That's what we will utilize mostly. So leopards all will have unique coat patterns, and particularly spots around the eye area, around the whisker line, just above the whiskers. So those are the kind of markings that we use initially. After time and after seeing these leopards many, many times and day after day, it almost becomes like knowing your own dog. You just know that that's that leopard. You can see it in the way that they look from quite far away. But initially, yes, we identify them using spot patterns and the different spots that they have. No two leopard has the same spots. But isn't that the most beautiful little leopard? Eh? Look at those eyes. Like I was saying earlier, she's got quite a piercing little stare. Must have gotten that from her mom. She doesn't seem to have inherited the feisty characteristic that maybe Tundi and Shadow and Karula have inherited or have. But she definitely has the stare much like her mom, that's for sure. I think she's quite interested in what's going on with us. So you can see she's just kind of giving us a little look. With all the flies that are around, it's really disturbing her. I don't think she's actually getting much rest. There we go, you can see she's trying to actually catch them now. You're going to have to be a little faster than that, my girl. Slightly slow on the draw there. And you'll find that the flies are all over her. They'll go particularly into her ears, around her nose area, her mouth. There'll be bits of meat from when she's fed that will be around there that would have attracted them through their scent. And also when she's got moisture that will be coming off her nose, her nostrils, around her mouth area, from her saliva, that will attract those flies to sequester that moisture off her. And so that's why they're spending a lot of time around the face area more than anywhere else. So while those ears are really an asset when it comes to hunting and comes to kind of being able to detect animals around you and detect your environment, when it comes to flies, not such a pleasant thing to have. Rather, I'm sure she'd rather have smaller ears like us, where the flies don't bother her nearly as much. Oh, there we go, a little roll over, that's better. We can actually see you a bit better. So Diana would like to know if Karula takes these cubs on her hunting expeditions at the moment. As far as I know, not yet. I haven't spent much time with them, like I say. And from what I've heard is that generally she goes and makes a kill and still goes and fetches the cubs and brings them back to the carcass. I have seen that there's a few sightings, or heard of a few sightings, of Hosanna catching his own meals. So I saw one the other day where he caught a monitor lizard. And he's caught a couple of baby impalas as far as I know. So they are starting to hunt on their own. And typically with leopards, it's not like lions or cheetah where they'll actually take their cubs actively hunting. Often it's in the case where they're walking with the cubs to maybe to another carcass and they come across an opportunity and they'll kind of just try and show them what to do. Or the cubs will just watch mother as she goes about her normal business. But as far as I know, they're not actively being taught to hunt just yet by Karula. I'm sure it will start happening. And maybe we'll be lucky in the next couple of months to kind of witness that whole process as it goes on. But it is a beautiful, beautiful place that she's found. It's such a nice little area that we're in for a leopard. It's got nice cover, nice and thick. Like I say, we're up on a little bit of a crest here with a little drainage line just to our western side. And so there's a nice breeze that's really filtering over here, which is causing a nice kind of cool feel to this area. It's been hot all over. So here it's quite nice just to kind of be in this cool area, and for two leopards is amazing. So we're going to carry on here with a little bit, see if we can find the male, and see if we can maybe locate him. And in the meantime, Byron's got some things to show you on foot. Well, welcome back, guys. As you can see, Karula's making her way back to the kill now and has just started to feed. Obviously had a nice little rest down by the water, and it's now time for round 2, just to fill up that belly a little bit. I did see Shongile also popped out of the bush a little bit to see what was going on, so hopefully she'll come along and join, and hopefully the little prince will also make an appearance, and we'll get all 3 of them out in the open again. It has cooled down significantly, and I'm sure that's why she's feeding, is to just try and get a little bit more of that carcass, and hopefully then try get it up into a tree. It has obviously been on the ground for a day or two, and is really stinking quite badly. And so with this kind of heat, the scent is going to be carrying, and the wind is going to be carrying quite a distance, and so you'll end up with a situation where other predators, like I said, like lions, hyenas, might pick up that scent tonight. And so maybe she's just trying to lighten this load a little bit before it gets dark, and then put it up into this wattle that she's got it stashed under at the moment. But she's really tucking in. It looks like she hasn't eaten, and she's a little bit grumpy as well. There's a few growls and hisses, which is not uncommon for this particular cat. But it's in all likelihood due to heat and the fact that there are flies absolutely everywhere. As you can see all of those flies that are landing all over her, all over the carcass, and that will be driving her crazy. So there will be a few little growls and hisses at times, I'm afraid. She's just a bit grumpy with life. But you can also see she's kind of dragging it deeper into that thicket, and that's again just to try and keep it out of the way of any sign of, well, out of the way of anything like a vulture or a batelier that could come and see this carcass and then potentially land in this area and attract other predators. I think a fly just went up her nose, that's why we heard that little growling. Unfortunately, this is the only gap there really is to have a good visual of her, and luckily for all of you is that you don't have smell-o-vision, because the smell is quite something coming downwind here. As she's opening it up, it's kind of activating all that rotten meat under the skin, and it is quite stinky, I must be honest. So Elizabeth wants to know if Karula or any other big cat would potentially eat a rotten kill. Yes, they will. I have seen leopards scavenging off rotten buffalo, particularly now when we had this drought recently. We had quite a few carcasses that ended up being around the place, and so some of the leopards took advantage of that, and they ended up going into those carcasses and starting to feed off them. Leopards are not prone to it as much as what lions are. I've seen lions feeding off very rotten animals, and every now and then you'll find a leopard will do it. But yeah, Karula will do it. This particular carcass, as far as I know, is probably about 2 days old now, so in this kind of heat that meat will be off already, and so she'll in all likelihood have been eating quite rotten meat. I would imagine though after today she'll probably be done with it. Like I say, the smell is quite something, so I don't think she's going to be feeding on it too much longer, and hopefully the youngsters come and get involved and they'll feed off it a little bit more as well. I am going to just try reposition ourselves slightly. There's a little gap here. I'm just going to try see if we can get ourselves in there. See, if you have a look maybe to our left here, you can just see Shongile has just come out of her bush, and she's just watching what's going on with her mom dragging the carcass around. I don't know if you can just see her there to our left. There she is there. So you can see she's got a bit of a curious face, just having a look at what's going on and seeing what's happening and wondering probably why is mom dragging that carcass away. I'm sure she'll come in a little bit closer. And if mom stops feeding, I'd be sure that she'll come in and probably have a little feed for herself. I'm quite surprised that her brother hasn't come out of the woodwork yet and come and joined in, particularly with the carcass being dragged around and mom being on the carcass. I would have thought that he would have come and tried to see what's going on. But she's decided not pleasant with all the flies and back into her little thicket where she's going to hide. Karula, meanwhile, has kind of dragged it a little bit further in and is just having a little feed there. Sorry, she's quite grumpy this afternoon, and lots of hissing and growling at us at this stage, so trying not to move too much. And she has now dragged it into a thicket that is we are not able to see at all. So I'm just going to roll back slightly and hopefully she'll be okay with that. Right, so while we reposition and while we get ourselves into a better place, we're going to go back to Byron and see what he's up to and see what he's managed to find on his walk. Well, welcome back, guys. As you can see, we've got little Shongile has taken the place of her mom and is now having a good feed on this impala carcass. Karula seemed to become quite disinterested, dragged it around a little bit, and then got up and proceeded to walk away and go and hide herself in a big thick bush. So this little one has taken the opportunity now to quickly come in and have a good feed while mom is away. But look at the power on this little leopard. I mean, that leopard is about half the size of, maybe even a third of the size of that impala, and it is dragging that impala around as though it weighs nothing. It is quite phenomenal to watch these cats, and particularly these small little ones. And if you actually have a look there, you can see quite nicely the size of her paws. She's dropped it down now, but it is absolutely amazing as how much strength and power is in those front legs and neck area. Like I say, if you had to go there and drag that yourself, you would soon realize that that is not a light carcass to drag. And it, like I say, weighs probably 3 times what she does, and she's dragging it with ease, which is quite something. And you can see some of the weaponry that they've got. So you can see how those claws just protract out when they need them. Normally they stay sheathed and are protected so that they don't become blunt and worn down, but when they need them, like when they're feeding, they'll often then just push those claws out. And actually, if you have a look in that, you can see all the flies and maggots that have started to colonize on that meat. You can see how all those little fly larvae are eating all the little bits of meat away. And that is probably what is driving these leopards crazy. When Karula was sitting feeding there, she was just getting very upset the whole time she was there. Things were going in her face and on her nose, and she really wasn't a happy girl. But it is quite amazing how in 2 days that many little larvae can be laid by these flies and are already sitting feeding. You can actually see it's almost overflowing out of that stomach cavity at the moment, which is quite amazing. And so those little larvae are going to feed off that carcass, and they're going to get rid of all those little bits of meat that are up against the bones that things like the leopards can't get to. And you'll find that once they're done and they hatch and they become adults, which is normally in about, I'd say 5 or 6 days' time, they'll be done. And then you'll start to get little beetles that will come in instead, and their larvae will clean up the last little bit of remains that the vultures and hyenas and the leopards and the flies leave behind. And then you'll find the beetles going in, and they normally go into all those areas that is very difficult for everything else to go and feed off. So flies are actually quite a useful part of determining how old a carcass is. If you find lots of flies like that, lots of maggots, generally it's quite a fresh carcass within the week. As soon as you start seeing beetle larvae, you'll find that it's a little bit older. But you can see even Shongile has had enough of these flies. She's decided... you can see she's trying to move away from the flies, but I suppose the taste of meat is far outweighing the displeasure for flies. And I hear some of the viewers are quite grossed out by maggots. I know they are gross little things, but they are vitally important to actually keeping this whole ecosystem nice and clean. You know, they're feeding off all those little bits of rotten flesh that might lie around and cause disease, and so vitally important, as gross as they are. I think what's probably more gross is having to stick your head inside there and actually feed off it. I would be quite grossed out to actually have to do that. So luckily we're not leopards, and we don't have to eat these things and even be exposed to these maggots too much. But just watch how her tail is flicking, her ears are going, the flies are absolutely incredible. When she came up to the carcass just now, just after Karula had left, the carcass had kind of sat for a few minutes and was fairly stationary, and she touched it, and there's this explosion of flies that came flying off there in a cloud, and it just kind of emphasized how many there actually were all over there. So you can imagine how uncomfortable it must be to be sitting there and them landing on you all over the place. I'm a firm believer that a fly on me is not a pleasant experience, and so, you know, you can imagine when there's hundreds of them landing on you all at once, it must be very uncomfortable. I'm quite surprised, though, that Hosanna has not arrived or shown his face anywhere. Maybe he's had a really good feed during the day and is still just far too sleepy. I did see her just now pop her head up and have a look around, and maybe it was him moving around in the background there somewhere, but as yet we haven't been able to find him or see any sign of him. I'm sure he is around here. There's lots of little thickets that he could hide in that I'm sure he'll emerge out of later. But if you have a look, you can actually see how Karula has dragged that carcass now, and she's actually dragged it under a far better tree for her to take up. So I'm sure that part of the kind of dragging process was to get it to this tree where she can utilize those branches and get it up there and away from the ground, and possibly away from the flies and away from, like I say, other predators like hyenas and lions, where she can then probably feed a little bit more at ease. typical leopard behavior where they feed from the back end going forward. You can see she's feeding from the back side of the ribs there, going into the sort of neck areas and the flank areas, which is a typical way a leopard would feed. And you can see every now and then her head moves up and down, and basically what she's doing there is using that very rough tongue to lick little pieces off of the leg and the rib joints, and to be able to get all those little ones out. So Diana wants to know if the flies will disappear at night. The flies won't disappear at night, they still will be around, but they'll be far less active. So what you find generally is on a carcass like this is that the flies will go and land on a tree nearby, and they just spend the night resting on there, and then in the mornings they back down onto the carcass. You will find a few flies, especially in concentration like this, that will end up staying on the carcass, but generally they fly up into the tree, like the tree that's above that impala carcass, and they'll go and rest there. I think Shongili's had enough now. You can see she's moved away and is just lying down in the grass. Is now going to just do a bit of grooming. So after feeding like that, you'll find there's going to be little bits of meat like we were talking about earlier, that she's going to try and get rid of now and try and kind of, oh, maybe not. Maybe we're going to go feed again. Let's have a look. I think she's very undecided as to what she wants to do. It's a case of when you're hungry and you want to eat, but it's really just not comfortable to be eating there. I think she just kind of is unsure of where she wants to put herself, and I wouldn't be surprised she ends up moving off and going and lying in a similar kind of position that she was in earlier, away from all these flies, or she maybe even will jump up into the tree. I saw her having a little look there. Oh, have a look at that. Isn't that cute? She's busy rolling around in the grass. So just now when we were sitting with her, she was actually rolling around on the carcass like that, which is quite an unusual thing. I would have thought she would have tried to have left the carcass alone. So Waz would like to know if the leopard would take a bite out of the maggots. So Waz, in my experience, no, they don't. I'm sure they do consume a few maggots when they're feeding, so every now and then they'll grab a bit of meat here and there that will have a maggot or two on it. And yes, like you say, they are huge protein sources, and so they can eat those and digest those. But you probably find that they, in a situation like this where you've got a big carcass, there's far tastier bits of meat than a ball of moving maggots, and so for them they'd rather target those kind of big chunks of meat and get those big chunks of protein into their system than those small little ones. You might find in a situation where they were desperate for food, if they were battling to find food, then maybe they would lap them up. I have seen leopards eating termites quite regularly. I've seen them eating grasshoppers, so they do eat insects from time to time, but in a case like this, there's so much meat on that impala carcass that she really doesn't need to worry about those maggots too much. It'll be far tastier to eat the chunks of impala than it is going to be eating a whole bunch of wriggling little maggots. And I'm sure they're feeding very vigorously like this on purpose. So what they're doing is as they grab it, they give it a shake, and that's also probably getting rid of a lot of those maggots and a lot of those flies that have landed on that carcass, and they're able to then get a few chunks of nice clean meat without being mobbed by a whole bunch of flies. But you could see there when she pulled how all the flies came flying up past her head. Yeah, not a very pleasant place to be at this stage, I would imagine. Look at the power as she drags that, amazing. I'm not quite sure where she's dragging it to. I think she's, youthful exuberance is probably just trying to drag it away from the flies. She hasn't quite learnt yet that flies with wings tend to follow, and they'll just carry on. Wherever she drags it, they'll end up landing on it again anyway. But maybe she thinks if she drags it enough, the flies will leave her alone. But at this stage, not winning at all. You can see she's kind of tucking into those sinewy muscle areas around the ribs. So while Shongile battles the flies and the raging battle continues, we're going to cross over to James and see what he's got in terms of hippos and weavers.